Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have another great show for you today. Happy Monday and happy belated Valentine's Day. Do a little heart there.
Love Day. What you do to celebrate Love Weekend?
You know, typical dinner, date, etc. How about you?
Same thing, but it's different when you have a kid. You gotta she thinks it's all of our Valentine's Day. So
Oh, well, that's nice.
it's cute, but it's also like the romantic thing, probably.
Well, the thing I'm feeling most romantic about is this increased warm weather, which has finally gotten rid of, not all of it, but most of the snow we've been dealing with.
No longer suffering in D.C., so thank God for that. Coming up on Rising, former President Barack Obama sat down for an interview over the weekend where he discussed aliens. I know you saw it, President Trump's immigration enforcement, and he even suggested that Democrats should shift their strategy on homelessness.
Plus, Secretary of State Marco Rubio delivered a speech at the Munich Security Conference that has since gone viral. In it, he said that Europe and the U.S., quote, belong together.
And President Trump railed at comedian Bill Maher in a very lengthy Truth Social post, calling the dinner the two shared a, quote, total waste of time. But first, Robby, since that's not on your radar, what else is on your radar?
Wait, you will for this one. Frankly, I didn't expect to be proven right this quickly. But here we are. Remember just 2 weeks ago when I warned that releasing all of the Epstein files, including not just emails, but also uncorroborated reports and investigative documents, was an unprecedented course of action that could end up exposing innocent people to humiliation and retaliation? Well, guess what? We learned on Friday that 4 of those 6 names uttered by Representative Ro Khanna on the House floor last week, the names of the alleged Epstein co-conspirators whom Representative Thomas Massie said were likely incriminated, are just 4 random people. They have nothing whatsoever to do with Epstein. How is that possible? Let me explain. As part of their investigation, law enforcement with the Southern District of New York assembled a photo lineup of potential suspects. If you watch police procedurals on television, you probably know how this goes. A witness is given a bunch of photos. Only one of them is the suspect, and the investigators see if the witness identifies the correct one. The other photos depict people who have nothing to do with the crime. And that was the case here, as Khanna himself now concedes. The congressman writes on X, I appreciate reporting confirming today that Salvatore Nuara, Zurab Michelazzi, Leonid Lenov, and Nicola Caputo were just part of a photo lineup and are not connected to Epstein's crimes. I wish DOJ had provided that explanation earlier instead of redacting and then unredacting their names. They have failed to protect survivors, created confusion for innocent men, and have protected rich and powerful abusers. We must have full transparency and the truth. In all fairness to the congressman, Massie did state previously that one reason those 4 names might have been redacted was specifically because they appeared in a police lineup.
And you see no reason why those men's names are redacted in these files?
No, unless they were in some random lineup. But this requires the DOJ to respond to it, just like they responded to my 2 tweets tonight about the Sultan, who had heretofore not been known, and about Lex Wessner, who is in the files listed as a co-conspirator on the file that they unredacted tonight.
Turns out he was right about that, but I think, given this possibility, it was unwise for Khanna to take to the House floor and smear, let's repeat, 4 random people as criminal co-conspirators in a global sex trafficking ring. By the way, this is exactly why it is not common to release investigative files of this nature, because they contain information investigators gathered for whatever reason that may have nothing to do with the case. It's why Representative Clay Higgins of Florida, I keep bringing him up, was the low no vote on the Epstein Files Transparency Act, and he was 1,000% correct when he said this. It abandons 250 years of criminal justice procedure in America. As written, this bill reveals and injures thousands of innocent people, witnesses, people who provided alibis, family members, etc. If enacted in its current form, this type of broad reveal of criminal investigative files released to a rabid media will absolutely result in innocent people being hurt. End quote. Higgins was right from the start. Now, I can't claim that I came to my senses that quickly, I admit it, but it looks like I got there a little bit quicker than some other folks. To all the people who've been screaming at me online that I'm just running cover for elite sexual abusers, or I don't care about victims, or I'm in league with Israeli intelligence, or whatever the ridiculous smear of the moment is, Never too late to put down the pitchforks, folks. And look, Lindsey, I think a lot of what I warned about this case is coming true. Me and Clay
You wanted
Higgins.
5 minutes to say I told you so?
Well, yeah, I did tell you so.
Robbie, fine. You have points. Just because you have an example of something doesn't mean that everything should be thrown in the trash otherwise. I think that Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie have, I believe, embarked on something.
I think they screwed up royally.
But I think that they embarked on something that they genuinely believe is worth spending the time on, and possibly for Massie risking his political career on. I think that they do think that there's a lot here. And in this particular case, because Ro Khanna went on the floor and announced these names, he thought that he had a smoking gun and he was incorrect. But the problem was the execution, not the transparency. So the Department of Justice could easily have explained why certain names were redacted over and over again or at all prior to handing him sloppy files that they say were turned into them in that way from the FBI and not with no explanation and turning them over to Massie and Khanna. That's why people are so confused.
I'm not impugning Massie and Khanna's motivations. I know them both. We've had Khanna on the show before. I think they are generally people I like in government. It is not personal at all. I understand why they did what they did, but I'm sorry, it was not wise they saw the unredacted files, and then within, 48 hours of that, earlier, they saw them, I think, over the weekend or on Monday, and then within 2 days or so, Khanna's on the House floor saying, here are 4 names. I mean, they could have waited.
That's what you called for. You want him he's saying he has a smoking gun. He was obviously misled.
And he was wrong.
Yes, he was wrong.
He was totally wrong. So I mean, look, I could say something on television. I could say I have evidence that 4 people are complicit in, again, the most horrible crime. I didn't say not all the information adds up with their tax filings this year. They said criminally indicated in a global sex trafficking ring. Then, oops. No, they have absolutely nothing to do with it. That's why that's why this power should not be abused. A, the power to be immune from libel or defamation when you say things on the House floor, that shouldn't be abused. B, this is why we don't just release investigative files. This is why we've never done this before. For exactly the reason Clay Higgins says, is that it doesn't, the files contain information that police gathered that has nothing to do with Epstein.
Well, I think because there's a mistrust in government right now, and because people are asking for all these files, there's I think, legitimate argument about whether people
are self-protecting. Is this addressing the mistrust? Is this reducing the mistrust?
Some of it is legitimate, like saying Lex Wessner is in there and really looking into that. And then other people are just catching a stray, which is, you're right, not right. They can sue.
Lex Wessner was already known.
Okay, but there's people that want to know how to connect the dots exactly here. There possibly could have been co-conspirators. The only reason why we don't fully know that is because we didn't have a chance to bring Epstein fully to justice in 2019 because of murky details about what happened and how he was killed. And so that's what we're told. But CBS released footage of some possible other person in the jail maybe going to his cell that was also in the Epstein files that was written but not told to the American public. So you can understand why people are concerned about what we're being told versus what the truth is.
Okay, but that was not the reason to release these files, was not to shed more light on the circumstances of Epstein's death itself. It was because there was a public perception and a claim by members of Congress and various talking heads and partisan people on both sides of the political spectrum that other powerful people, that Epstein had procured underage women to be sexually abused by other powerful people, and we didn't get justice in those cases. And for some reason, the victims can't tell us who they are. So we need the government, we need the investigative files where the police were recording information on whoever that was, and they had that information and didn't do anything with it, or there were settlements or whatever, and we need to know that information. And that has utterly, completely collapsed that idea.
The reason why this is all connected, because unlike in 2008, there was not going to be a lenient plea deal available for Epstein. So in that case, he might have led to spilling out the beans on other names that might have been involved in this possible ring that you keep talking about.
Maybe.
Yes, but since we lost that access, obviously the person died, people still want answers. There are real people that have been involved in this that actually want answers that for whatever reason, I'm not victim shaming, are not coming forward and saying the names. And so Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie are taking on the noble task of trying to figure it out. But if the DOJ and FBI did their job well and provided Congress to oversee the proper information so that they can oversee well, then we wouldn't have all these questions and releasing inappropriate names. 4
random people got smeared as co-conspirators in a criminal sexual abuse scandal. My understanding is one of them already lost his job. They're all going to suffer massive consequences because of this. And I think it was shameful what has been done to them, and they are owed an apology, and we should be rethinking some of this project. But that's my take.
Now, Secretary of State Marco Rubio striking a softer tone over the weekend in Munich, offering some reassurances to our allies in Europe. Why some here at home are skeptical of this new approach. We'll be right back to talk about it.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio traveled to Germany over the weekend to speak to the Munich Security Conference. That's just 1 year after Vice President J.D. Vance addressed the same group of allies with a harsh critique of European values.
Rubio struck a less aggressive tone than Vice President Vance or even President Trump, who, between tariff threats and vows to annex Greenland, has seemed to lead with hostility and harsh criticism toward the continent. But despite the softer tone, Rubio stayed firm on the administration's intent to reshape the transatlantic relationship. Take a listen.
We can no longer place the so-called global order above the vital interests of our people and our nations. We do not need to abandon the system of international cooperation we authored, and we don't need to dismantle the global institutions of the old order that together we built. But these must be reformed. These must be rebuilt.
Rubio continued.
In a time of headlines heralding the end of the transatlantic era, let it be known and clear to all that this is neither our goal nor our wish. Because for us Americans, our home may be in the Western Hemisphere, but we will always be a child of Europe.
Following the Secretary of State's speech, he received high praise from many conservatives online. Former host of The View, Meghan McCain, wrote on X, "Wow, truly one of the most inspiring speeches I've seen in years from Secretary Rubio in Munich. What an incredible statesman and ambassador for our country, just blown away. More of all this, please, from the admin." And as for the Europeans in the room, they seem to relax at least a little bit. EU Executive Commission President Ursula von der Leyen told the AP that his remarks were, quote, very reassuring, but noted that in the administration, some have a harsher tone on these topics. And EU Defense Minister Hanno Pevkur seemed to agree, quote, it was a good speech needed here today. That doesn't mean we can rest on pillows now. Still, a lot of work has to be done.
But back here at home, some were a little more skeptical of Rubio's shift in tone. Senator Mark Kelly, writing on X in part, it took a world war and 8 decades to build the strongest alliance that this world has ever seen. It took less than a year to practically destroy it. When Secretary Rubio said the old world order was dead during his speech in Munich, he was right. It's dead because Donald Trump blew it up. He thinks this somehow benefits us. He is wrong. Our allies no longer trust us. This means these countries are looking elsewhere for trade and security. That makes you poorer and less safe. And Senator Chris Van Hollen called out European leaders in a post of his own, writing, Rubio's standing ovation in Munich after he declared the end of the rules-based order shows how weak many European leaders have become. Instead of defending universal human rights, they folded to his siren song of blood and soil.
I don't know about that. Look, this is age-old tactic. You get the good cop and bad cop. Vance and Trump play bad cop. Rubio goes over there to play good cop. It's all still on message. Trump and Vance don't want to abandon Europe. We just want them to live up to liberal commitments on speech and other things, and we want them to pay more for their own defense. We don't want them to be free riders in the American project of defending Europe, but that doesn't mean we don't want to be friends and allies with Europe. We are, of course, a child of Europe, as Marco Rubio said. I agree with that fully. We are culturally connected to Europe, and we must stand with them against our common foes, China and Russia. So I was impressed by Rubio's speech, and he's doing a great job. We all agree. Fantastic.
I think they took it way further than good cop versus bad cop. This is a calmer tone, but certainly not healing the year of what you would look at as abuse from the administration and our president to Europe in a variety of ways. We can talk about most recently with Greenland and the fact that that felt like a bit of harassment, or we can talk about all the tariffs and the back and forth about how it destabilized economies back and forth as they didn't know what the president would do next. So we can also look at Ukraine and see the way that we treated Zelensky versus the way we treated Putin in the beginning and the way that he berated him in the Oval Office, right? These are all of our allies.
We've given Zelensky billions of dollars in military aid.
European leaders.
We've treated him.
You know that press conference where he berated him in the office. Okay. J.D. Vance was there. You remember?
What do you mean how? They had an argument. We've given them billions of dollars.
You know that European leaders last year came to the White House unexpectedly, and a lot of them, to tell President Trump they disagree with his strategy with Russia. And still here we are, lo and behold, have no end game that President Trump promised us regarding Russia. And Ukraine is still getting obliterated. But that's irrelevant right now. We're talking about all
our best with Ukraine. I don't know what else.
But
they can send troops if they think it's so important. They can fight the war then.
There's so many pressure campaigns and strategies that I don't agree with coming out of this administration towards our ally, which is Europe. And I say this over and over again. We've treated European countries as like China or somebody that's an adversary in a variety of ways. And I think that we need to scale back. It's bigger than what J.D. Vance has done, and now Rubio saying something differently. He's still saying that we don't want to appreciate the relationship that we built post-World War II and continue to protect and defend each other in this way. But you would like to move forward and act like nothing happened in the last year. And that's why there's criticism from these European leaders that are giving him a standing ovation, because the Trump administration has basically disrespected Europe for a year now.
You're against the tariffs on European countries.
Yes. I'm against the conversation about Greenland.
I am as well, because I'm against, let's stick with the tariffs for
okay.
And I'm against the tariffs too. I think all tariffs are stupid. They tax on us. But the argument for them, so Europe is also, this is us economically harming Europe. But Europe, Brussels has declared war on our tech companies, has fined X, raided their offices, has erected an infrastructure of digital policing that would make it impossible, that is making life difficult for American tech companies there, and is why there's no tech sector in Europe. So is that not, that's government policy, is that not an economic attack on us? We should both stand down. They should stop doing that, and we should remove all the tariffs. I agree with that. But you're chiding us for our economic policies toward them. What about their economic policies toward us? And we are the superpower. We're the ones that should dictate what the economic policies are. So that's like I think the administration's position is the beatings will continue until morale improves. Like, stop doing that to us, and then the tariffs can come off.
So then why?
That's Vance's view.
Yes. So then why is Rubio there trying to say in a softer tone?
They're doing
why is David McCain? I know, but
clear as day.
But you would hope that leadership looks more like Rubio to allies. That there doesn't have to be a good cop, bad cop against your allies. That diplomatic conversations come through dialogue. This has been my recurring, I guess, biggest criticism, aside from the childishness and the tweets that comes out of the administration and different parts of it, is the fact that there are less conversations and way too much action, knee-jerk reactions in regards to immigration, in regards to this, in regards to Greenland. There's a lot of talking and action being taken to make people uncomfortable, as opposed to conversation happening, whether behind closed doors or even in front of the American public, that doesn't need to happen to make us all chaotic, right? The fact that we've treated Europe in a variety of ways, even the conversation going back to Zelensky being in the Oval Office, we didn't need to see that obnoxious conversation happening. They could have had a dialogue behind the scenes about what you're looking for from Ukraine to do for itself versus what the United States provides. And so if you're looking for Brussels to do,
Lindsey.
No, don't say men argue. Like, no, don't say women argue too. That's not a good point. I don't think that the leadership is done well. And I think when you send Rubio in there to act like there's an entirely different position because he's the calm one, maybe the leadership top down could be the calm ones and learn how to have dialogue first without berating people and making things uncomfortable and static for a year and then trying to go back.
That's not America first. It's not going to be whatever Europe wants, and we will meekly submit to them. We'll give them whatever we want, and we can never complain about it. That's not how it's going to go. It's going to be, they're going to get on board with our program, or there's going to be consequences.
That's bullying. That's called bullying.
No, it's called diplomacy. Next up, a report from the Congressional Budget Office has a gloomy forecast for the country's national debt. Not good. Don't go anywhere. The Congressional Budget Office, or the CBO, says the United States national debt set to soar to $64 trillion over the next 10 years. On Wednesday, the CBO released its marquee report. estimating that Republicans' tax and spending package that they enacted last summer and President Trump's immigration policies would increase the deficits by trillions of dollars.
Now, the CBO predicts that the annual gap between government spending and revenue is expected to rise 1.9 trillion during the fiscal year 2026. The annual deficit is then forecasted to grow to 3.1 trillion by 2036. This budget gap, per the CBO, would offset the estimate $3 trillion in deficit reduction that are expected from Trump's tariffs.
The report also shows an increase in debt held by U.S. bond holders. Debt held by the public is expected to rise from 101% of gross domestic product in 2026 to 120% in 2036.
Congressional Budget Office Director Philip Swagel said in a statement, quote, "Those sustained large deficits are historically unusual, given that the unemployment rate is projected to remain below 5% for the 10-year budget window."
White House spokesperson Kush Desai told Reuters in a statement, quote, "Smaller deficits and higher growth, thanks to President Trump's economic policies, are going to slash, not grow, America's deficit to GDP rate." Desai noted that the Congressional Budget Office frequently underestimates economic growth, adding that the 2025 GDP growth did outpace the CBO's projections.
The federal government's last budget surplus occurred more than 20 years ago in the year 2001.
It's not good. Massive.
I know this is like
massive
scratching nails on a
debt.
chalkboard for you.
It's
I know.
so horrible. This is going to be our legacy to our children and our children's children. Massive, unsustainable government enacted debt that we are making no effort to fix. We should be a solvent nation. You would never, if people's personal spending habits, you would never say this was responsible to go into debt like this. I know it's a little bit different because the country can print money and has control of the currency itself. It's still bad. And we know what's causing this debt. It is America's all too generous system of entitlements and its bloated military.
No, you missed.
It's those two
you
things.
You buried the lead. Sure, you can argue that those things add to the debt, but surely you heard that the big, beautiful bill is causing this debt.
Yeah,
surely you heard that the immigration policies are contributing to causing this debt. Surely you read the same script that I just read.
Well, I don't agree with the immigration
policies. It's a Congressional Budget Office.
Add to the yes.
Oh, you don't agree with the policies. I thought you meant you don't agree with the CBO.
No. They've added, yes, I oppose the big, beautiful bill. It added to the debt.
Rising debt equals higher interest rates equals slower growth for our country. It's that simple.
It's all bad. But what the government spends most of its money on is the Defense Department and Medicare and Social Security.
But to be an administration,
that's what we have to get at.
To be an administration that even for fiscally conservative people that was interested in their interests were piqued by what DOGE could possibly do. To see this administration bring in Department of Government Efficiency and then watch Elon Musk leave after less than a year and watch the debt skyrocket in a year, and then for the next 10 years, I think it says it's going to skyrocket even more. I mean, that's absurd.
Republicans have no interest in controlling the debt. Zero.
So you realize that was all?
I've known
you had faith in Elon
years.
Musk for a little while, so that's.
Well, I think Elon Musk has a sincere effort in it, but he was only at it for 100 or 150 days or something, and then back to the private sector, and that legacy doesn't live on. It's not a.
It's the Band-Aid of it all, though. So you give people a little bit of tax cuts, you tell them it's a good thing, and then you realize we're hurting future generations.
You have to pass legislation that privatizes Social Security, that makes huge cuts to Medicare or finds ways to save money there, and you have to shrink the Defense Department consistent with an America First foreign policy that does not engage in nation building or costly intervention. You do those three things, you could get rid of the debt, and you could create a sustainable economy for our descendants.
Robbie, you sound as confident as Elon Musk, but you see,
he left with tail tucked. I mean, they just have to actually make the legislation. They won't do it. They run on doing it, and they won't do it. That's the difference between Republicans and Democrats. Republicans promise to control the debt. Democrats make no such promises.
That's a good one. Former President Obama spoke on a number of topics in a recent interview, including whether or not he thinks aliens exist. I'm going to talk about that in my lens. Stick around.
Welcome back to Rising. Lindsay, what's in your lens today?
One of your favorite topics, aliens. So for all my people out there who feel like we might not be alone, yes, we're starting here. Former President Barack Obama confirmed the existence of extraterrestrial life in a recent No Lie episode with progressive podcaster Brian Tyler Cohen. Take a look.
Are aliens real?
They're real, but I haven't seen them, and they're not being kept in what is it?
Area 51.
Area 51. There's no underground facility, unless there's this enormous conspiracy, and they hid it from the President of the United States.
Look, like everyone else, I was taken aback, especially since there was no follow-up question asked. He just said he believed in aliens, and then after hours of our heads spinning, Barack Obama clarified his stance on Instagram since there was no follow-up question asked, and he wrote in part, quote, "I was trying to stick with the spirit of the speed round, but since it's gotten attention, let me clarify. Statistically, the universe is so vast that the odds are good there's life out there." Okay, so he wasn't announcing little green men. He was referencing what the government has already acknowledged. Unidentified aerial phenomena exist. The Pentagon has released reports. NASA has held briefings. Real in this context, I guess, means unexplained. Even though that was a huge headline from this interview, there were some other parts of it that were less fun and more urgent, like the former president sounding less amused and more concerned about the state of our politics. He addressed the recent deployment of thousands of immigration agents to Minnesota, calling out what he described as, quote, rogue behavior. And he indirectly responded to a racist video posted earlier this month by President Trump that depicted him and the former First Lady, Michelle Obama, as apes. Here's what he said.
There's this sort of clown show that's happening in social media and on television. And what is true is that there doesn't seem to be any shame about this among people who used to feel like you had to have some sort of decorum and a sense of propriety and respect for the office, right? So that's been lost.
That's not partisan. That's about standards, about whether we still believe public office requires a baseline of dignity, which I do. And then he did something that ruffled feathers inside his own party. He talked about homelessness.
Morally, ethically speaking, it is an atrocity that in a country this wealthy, we have people just on the streets. And we should have we should insist on policies that recognize their full humanity.
But he didn't stop there.
But we should also recognize that the average person, doesn't want to have to navigate around a tent city in the middle of downtown.
That's the tension, compassion and practicality. He argued Democrats won't build support for temporary housing or services if the message is simply that it's not homeless people's fault and they should be able to do whatever they want. He called that a losing political strategy, and some heard it as a direct shot at Governor Gavin Newsom. So yes, this interview was about aliens, but it also was about accountability, about governing in reality, not ideology, about understanding that voters can care about human dignity and public order at the same time. So lots to talk about, Robby. Let's start with the aliens.
I guess we'll get that out of the way.
Let's get it out the way.
I groaned when I saw this clip because I'm like, oh, we're going to talk about aliens.
I'm sorry, I got in your shot.
And what he said, all he said was, which we all...
He said, yes, they're real.
He didn't say anything about the aerial phenomenon, though. What he said in the tweet, which was very clarifying, and speaks to the fact that he is a savvy guy, no matter what you think of him. He's like, he just thinks it's overwhelmingly likely that somewhere out there in the universe, there is some form of life. It can't be that Earth is the only place where this happened, where this, life came to exist. This doesn't matter because space travel is so difficult and they're so far away and they're probably not existing at the same time as us. So practically it's the same thing as there being no aliens. He was not saying that he thinks the aerial phenomena is alien.
I'm sorry, are presidents saying, yes, they're real, so matter of fact, they're just not in Area 51, and you're acting like people are causing too much
He's not
ruckus?
saying they visited Earth. He's saying
he said, yes, they're real.
There's some bacteria on some moon somewhere. That doesn't mean there's intelligent life at the same time there's intelligent life on Earth. Intelligent life on Earth has only been here for, however many thousands or, 60 million? Well, there's been 60 million years is the life of the planet. You get these things mixed up. What's the life of the planet? The life of the lifespan of actual life on the planet is a small window in terms of the sun's, like how much the age of the universe. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I
There's
understand.
a small window for which we're here.
I understand.
And if that happens to correspond with life from another planet somewhere, that would be astonishingly unlikely. But it was funny, Brian Tyler Cohen, people were mad at him that he didn't ask a follow-up.
So much vitriol towards the guy. I'm like, man.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of his.
It was kind of crazy to not ask, if they're not in Area 51, what are you suggesting? Or what does alien mean to you? Like, that was a good follow-up.
Obama explained it. Okay.
Yes.
We
can talk about.
Look, how do I put this? I appreciate that, I was very opposed to Obama when he was president.
Really?
Well, of course. I totally disagree with his policies. He was, for the time period, extremely progressive and extremely left-leaning. He was temperamentally moderate he is moderate in the things that he says, not in the governance he does, but he is a intelligent thinker and a smart talking person. So was Romney when they ran it against each other. It was a high level of intellectual discussion in their debate.
Yes.
And do we miss that? Yes. So now when he talks about policy, he sounds very reasonable, and frankly, by the standards of where the Democratic Party has gone and the people actually running the cities, right. He is saying thoughtful things about homelessness and the trade-offs one should pursue. That is not something that the mayor of Chicago or the mayor of New York or these far left people actually running these cities who are well to his left and govern that way. It's very different. So yes, it makes one almost missing Obama. Yeah, I feel it. But the way he governed was far left. So
I think that's why there's if you like his policies or not, like the respect.
We like listening to him talk.
Yeah, but respect shown to the office of presidency. He's showing and exemplifies that continually, even post-presidency. So do other presidents, like George W. Bush. I know, that was the biggest controversy, tan suit, I know. But when you look at the tan suit controversy versus the things that the president actively does every day, and I always bring this up over and over again, like the auto pen photo instead of President Biden, it's very childish and diminishing to an office that has prestige and years of legacy attached to it.
Biden diminished the office.
Okay, we're talking about Obama and Trump right now, right? And the juxtaposition between the two, correct? Okay, so I just feel like he reminds us that there is civility and can be civility. And I think that the words clown show were a great way to describe it, because when a president says, I didn't notice that they made you look like an ape, even though that's racist, it's not my fault and can't even apologize. Well, it shows a lack of decorum and respect, and it just shows things that you would hope that you have in leadership. These are not partisan things. You hope that leaders can lead.
Senile and couldn't host cabinet meetings.
You want to talk about Biden?
This be awake
you want to talk about Biden all day.
That did something to undermine the office.
This interview was with Obama, and we're talking about the current President Trump. But you want to talk about history? Okay. We're not talking about why is Obama Biden. They're not.
Lens we can talk about.
It's my lens. So let's talk about that, and then let's talk about the homelessness thing. I want to say that Gavin Newsom responded and was like, because all the headlines said broke apart from or broke ties with Gavin Newsom over this issue. And he's like, how did we break ties? We're on the same page. Like, Gavin Newsom's arguing that he never said anybody do anything in these tent cities. So why are people directing Obama's comments at him? He doesn't feel that way, even though I know LA has a particular problem with homelessness.
Huge problem, because you can't just, which Obama did concede, you can't just throw money at this problem. We've seen, you give money to these people who live in these tent cities, you can buy them all apartments. It's cheap. It's not that much money to give all the money to the people and have them have apartments. They don't stay in them because they're drug addicted and mentally ill, and they need to be out on the street where the drug dealers are. And so it's a mental illness and drug problem that must be fixed coercively by having people in facilities. And that it's not nice, because applying force people can get hurt, and it's ugly, and the liberals don't want to do it, Democrats don't want to do it. That's the problem. It's not lack of money. It can't be a housing first strategy. You need to address the mental illness, drug addiction.
It's just saying have nuance and layers to it. Like, make sure that we're leading, understanding people's humanity when we do make decisions. Whether we make too lenient of decisions, saying everyone should stay, we need to put everyone in a house. You're right, that has been ineffective in certain ways. But also throwing everyone in a mental institution is also probably not a full blanket strategy.
Not everyone, but people who are violently mentally ill in the streets.
Which is not a majority of them. Violent, mentally ill.
Of the people who live on the streets,
are mostly violently, mentally ill.
They're not necessarily violent, but they're very mentally ill and very drug addicted.
We'll keep talking about this.
Kristi Noem, next up, is getting some pushback after, I guess, suggesting her administration has to ensure that, quote, the right people are getting elected in November. Is that controversial? Stay with us. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem got in some trouble after indicating during a press conference over the weekend that she thinks it's her administration's job to make sure the, quote, right leaders are elected in the midterms this November. Take a listen.
Elections is another one of those critical infrastructure responsibilities that I have as well. And I would say that many people believe that it may be one of the most important things that we need to make sure we trust is reliable, and that when it gets to election day that we've been proactive to make sure that we have the right people voting, electing the right leaders to lead this country through the days that we have, knowing that people can trust it.
That particular soundbite sparked outrage online. Former Congressman Joe Walsh writing on X, quote, "Who are the right people? And it's not government's job to choose our leaders. It's the American people's job. I served in Congress with Kristi Noem. It's not at all surprising to hear her spew this un-American expletive." And former Obama advisor David Axelrod taking it a step further in a post of his own, writing, "This is why Kristi Noem will remain in place despite her flagrant corrupt mismanagement of the DHS, at least through the midterm elections. The president wants a loyal Aparchik in place who will do whatever is necessary to ensure the right leaders win." Even border czar Tom Homan seemed to be skeptical of Noem's comments there, offering this lukewarm defense.
What does she mean when she says electing the right leaders? That's not really immigration enforcement or DHS responsibility.
I don't know. That'd be a question for the secretary. If I had to guess, probably that only those legally eligible to vote would vote. But I have not talked to the secretary about those statements. That'd be something she'd have to answer.
Of course, Noem made those comments amid the push to pass the Save America Act, which would, among other things, require voters to present a valid photo ID at their polling place. President Trump doubled down on the push for nationwide photo ID in a series of posts on Truth Social, writing, "There will be voter ID for the midterm elections, whether approved by Congress or not. Also, the people of our country are insisting on citizenship and no mail-in ballots, with exceptions for military, disability, illness, or travel." He continued in a separate post, "We cannot let the Democrats get away with no voter ID any longer. These are horrible, disingenuous cheaters. This is an issue that must be fought and must be fought now. If we can't get it through Congress, there are legal reasons why this scam is not permitted." Well, I can't believe this made
What do you
headlines.
mean?
What was controversial about what she said at all?
The right people? It's
She said the right people voting to elect the right people.
The
She
problem
was
is that
referencing the eligibility of the people voting. It's her job to make sure that only American citizens are voting. The right people, the right candidates elected are the ones who are elected by American citizens and not by people who are ineligible to vote. That's obviously what she meant.
The onus is on her and the administration, as it always has been, to lay out examples of widespread election fraud. Lay out examples of all these migrants, people that crossed the border illegally, that have voted in all these elections. Lay it out. They haven't been able to lay it out. And so therefore, they're just accusing the country of all this mismanagement of past elections that has no examples and real life proof in any real terms that make this worth her saying. What do you mean real? We've been having real elections. Donald Trump lost one of them and can't admit it. So if anybody has come close to trying to sway an election or do anything illegal regarding an election, it would be President Trump. So you understand why people have questions around what is all coming out of it. Even Tom Homan, who's somehow been elevated to the level-headed guy in this all.
Well, he hates Kristi Noem, so he was not going to help clarify her comments and put her in a way that makes her look flattering. They're fighting each other. So that's why he was not going to help her there. But he was right. If I have to guess, yes, the thrust of her comments again is just that.
Okay, but you have to understand why.
Why is this so offensive?
You understand why people don't trust President Trump in particular in regards to voting. You understand exactly that he won't admit that he lost the election. Because he knows that very well.
He filed lawsuits.
He knows that he lost it. I also, when we're talking about the SAVE Act, and he wants to push forward an executive order if it doesn't go through because people like Lisa Murkowski are against it. I understand that there's a large portion of the country that believes it's simple. Like, yes, just bring your ID, vote, and it's not that big a deal. Like we saw on CNN, even them pushing back in their polling showing, yeah, people are for this.
Black people support.
Right. I understand that. But I think that that's not taken into account. And Amber and I talked about this a little bit Friday. The fact that there are a number of people that maybe can't relate. Again, I'll tell you the same thing. Can't relate to our situation or CNN, anybody on that channel situation, or the average person that lives in the cities and has the luxury of even watching CNN. There are some people that live in extremely rural conditions, some people that haven't changed their last name seriously in years since they've been married on all their legal documentation. There are a variety of people that you put in strenuous situations. There are multiple people living paycheck to paycheck in this country. I believe it was 10 to 11% on the census. So there are people that actually will be hindered by this. And most of those people, unfortunately, happen to be people of color or people, because it's just a number of people in this country that have been disenfranchised in a variety of ways because of systemic racism. And we understand the history of this country about why it would be harder for them to vote if this falls on the people that are less fortunate. That's the way this country looks right now. We hope that it would change, but we would hope that people also can access their basic right of voting. And so just because you can't relate doesn't mean it's not true. And they're also not participating in these polls and say, oh, do you think you should bring ID? They don't have time, okay, to participate in stupid polls, somebody calling them asking, would you vote in an election? So should we not care about anybody that has a disability and can't make it to a certain place of polling at a certain time or wants to mail in? Should we not care about the people that live in extremely rural areas that have no transportation? Should we not care about any of that?
Do you want my honest answer?
If you say no,
I don't care.
I'm gonna flip your chair over.
Care. You gotta prove you're a citizen to vote. Sorry, them's the breaks. Just like you gotta prove you're 21 to buy liquor from the liquor store. It's not fun to go through paperwork. I've been going through some. I had to do a lot of unfun IRS paperwork, some immigration-related paperwork. It is a chore. It is a pain. It makes me hate the government. It makes me scream at my computer the documentation I have to provide. But that's just what you have to do. And you don't have to do it. In this case, you can just not vote. But if you want to vote, you got to prove you're a citizen. And the overwhelming majority of people in the country already have what they need to demonstrate that. And if you don't, I'm sure it's annoying. I'm not discounting that it's annoying.
They can't take the
Dealing
time
with
out.
government bureaucrats is annoying, but that's just how it's got to be.
But some of it's not just about annoying, Robbie. Some of it's actually I cannot take the time off work to do this thing. I cannot afford to pay the $10 to get a new passport or to get a new birth certificate. I cannot, because our country is in a state of uncomfortable financial stretch that's been happening since the pandemic. And so that's an acknowledgement that you have to make, that there are people that maybe you just can't relate to that actually just want to vote but can't afford all those other things. And we have to just have some respect for that situation and understanding. In a magic fairyland, I'd snap my fingers and we'd verify immediately that everyone was voting could vote, and they'd have little IDs to show it. But in the real world, there's got to be just a little bit of a process you have to go through. I know that's inconvenient, but I don't know what else we can do. Up next, President Trump rages at comedian Bill Maher in a lengthy Truth Social post, calling him very boring. We'll be right back after this. President Trump on Saturday lashed out at comedian Bill Maher for criticizing the president's post about China possibly making a deal with Canada.
In a lengthy Truth Social post, Trump described his 2025 dinner with Maher, writing, "He was extremely nervous, had zero confidence in himself, and to soothe his nerves immediately within seconds, asked for a vodka tonic. We had a great dinner. It was quick, easy, and he seemed to be a nice guy. And for the first show after our dinner, he was very respectful about our meeting. But with everything I have done in bringing our country back from oblivion, why wouldn't he be? But then I noticed his show started to devolve into the same old story. Very boring, anti-Trump, no mention of the perfect border, lowest crime in 125 years, the mass removal of stone-cold criminals." Well, he went on and on about the hockey statement, like what kind of a person would say such a foolish thing as this, as though I were being serious when I said it.
Bill Maher on his Friday show poked fun at Trump, referring to his recent Truth Social post about a possible deal between Canada and China, after which China will, quote, terminate all ice hockey being played in Canada and permanently eliminate the Stanley Cup. Meanwhile, in an interview with CNN's Alex Michelson on Saturday, Bill Maher mentioned his meeting with Trump. Let's watch.
Now, if after I had dinner with Donald Trump, I came back to this show and was seduced by that dinner and stopped tearing him a new one every week, every time I thought he did something wrong, then you would have a case. That didn't happen.
It did not happen.
Yeah, this was not Trump's best work. I mean, it was a funny post, but it screams like sour grape, like my friend betrayed me. Honestly, it makes you seem a little obsessed with what other people think about you. So I'm not sure. This doesn't paint Trump in a very flattering light. And Bill Maher, he criticizes Trump respectfully. He doesn't have TDS, and he's always attacking Democrats and the left, so I don't really think Trump's problem with him is fair. I mean, it's not. Yes, he's not a relentless booster. It's not like watching, OAN or something. But people watch it and it's fair. I mean, Bill Maher is pretty aligned with my perspective generally, so it's not surprising I like what he has to say. And that's going to be praise for Trump, some criticism of Trump. Usually it's not personal and nasty, though he is a comedian, so he says funny things that are jokes. I don't know. Trump should have not weighed in on this one.
It's interesting
IMO.
because Bill Maher is getting criticized constantly by Democrats for the things that he says about Democrats.
He doesn't have TDS. He hasn't set his hair on fire.
He can point out, in the same way that we just watched the Obama interview earlier in the show, and you could point out like the pros and cons about homelessness policies coming from the Democratic Party. Like Bill Maher is that type of person that can look at it, and he's not in politics and say, well, this seems silly. Like this doesn't seem like something to hang your hat on for Democrats. But for President Trump, he wanted him to basically, he's saying that when I meet with you and when I'm your friend, which we know is true because of the way he treated Marjorie Taylor Greene, it's like, you can support me and be one of my most adamant supporters. But if you say something, 1 or 2, 3, whatever, however many, I don't know what his number is, and you're out of line to Trump, well, now we are enemies. And so that's not a way to behave. Like, how would Bill Maher look to go on a show every day and praise Trump? Nobody would want to watch that show. He needs to be honest. He needs to provide his own perspective. That's what makes the show interesting. If he goes on there and constantly was talking about how good he is, even though, let's say, glaring obvious reports like where the economy stands and how people feel about it, if he's neglecting to say that, oh, it's beautiful, and just, then we wouldn't watch the show anymore. The show provides nuance. It provides wide-ranging guests. And so the Trump really does look a little bit like small-minded by trying to make Bill Maher cooperate. But we know that he likes when people cooperate with him and then treats them poorly when they don't. And
someone must have sent him this clip, I think. There was some reporting from Philip Wegman at Real Clear Politics last week about Trump's media diet that he got confirmed from, maybe from Trump himself or from someone in the administration, that Trump reads the New York Post, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, Washington Post, and then just watches Fox all the time, and then sees clips and snippets from things people send him, other stuff. But that's mainly where he gets his media.
I think he watches it all. I think it's not a diet. I think it's a robust dinner that he's having with media. I think he stares at it all day. And I think he watches...
Well, he mostly watches Fox.
I want to also mention that he watched the Super Bowl. So all the things that he says that he hates, like the halftime show, we saw him watching on tape. So
well, he
watches it all.
Decide whether he hates it, I think. That does it for us on Rising Live. Thanks for tuning in, and please look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way later today. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Hills YouTube channel so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're now available anywhere you listen to podcasts. See you tomorrow.